This is a story about two brothers and a friend who went to 14 English football matches in 14 days. While planning started out as just a long weekend in England to finally catch some matches after years of watching games in the States, some fortunate timing, ambition, and a little stupidity turned it into a 2-week football odyssey across England. Now, I'm not a filmmaker, but the trip was so incredible, and people I've talked to about it have been so interested in how we did it that I thought I'd share experiences, because I know that there are a lot of fans in the U.S. that would love to make a similar trip. So I'll plan on talking about all the methods we used to get tickets, how we decided where to go, the schedule, our budget, and just about anything else that might be useful for someone planning or wanting to take a trip like this. Please leave a comment if you have any questions, or like and subscribe. And if there's some interest, maybe I'll do some follow-ups to answer some of those questions. Our trip covered the 9th of April through the 23rd of April, 2024. We landed in Heathrow in the morning of April 9th and booked it right up to Sheffield in our rental car for the game that evening. Just a heads up, most rental cars in England will be stick shift. Fortunately, I learned how to drive a stick shift while living in South Africa, so I was fairly comfortable driving around. But you could definitely rent an automatic just for a bit more money if that made you more comfortable while driving around the UK. Our first game was Sheffield Wednesday versus Norwich City, which we were amped to see, as Sheffield Wednesday was on our must-see list. When we began planning our trip, we started out by listing all the teams and stadiums we wanted to see the most. And while we weren't able to see all the teams on that list, either due to schedules, availability, or just cost, it helped us to form a foundation for our plan. It guided our logistics and helped us to make sure that we saw as many important places to us as possible. And Hillsborough is definitely on that list. It was built in 1899, steeped in history, and while of course it's gone through some updates, in most respects it still shows its age, which is so different than in the U.S., where it's not uncommon to demolish a 25-year-old stadium. So it's just so cool being in a stadium, that old, that authentic, and walking into the stadium, seeing the Wednesday Hillsborough facade with that clock. I mean, it was as close to a religious experience as you could get. And it really carried us through the game because, despite all the brutal jet lag we were experiencing, we were just so excited to be there. It really just felt like we made it. And the game was a blast. Going in Wednesday was fighting against relegation, and Norwich was still fighting for a playoff spot, so there was a lot to play for. And while Wednesday had started the season so poorly, their new manager, Danny Roll, had really recharged them. And the fans were just singing his name constantly throughout the game. It was super cool. Norwich controlled almost the entire game, but Wednesday did come back with a fury to end it in a 2-2 draw. So even though there were some empty seats in the stadium, the atmosphere was amazing. It was just an incredible way to start the trip. Oh, and I do want to give a shout out to my friend Rich and his son, some lifelong Wednesday fans. It was awesome to see them after the game. Hope you guys are well. The next day, April 10th, we were in Birmingham for that evening's game at West Brom. As you'll see throughout the video, aside from the weekends, all these games take place at night. So if we didn't have to do that much driving during the day, we sometimes had a chance to check out a few places around town, which turned out to be mostly football places. There are a few teams around Birmingham, so we decided to check out the grounds at Villa Park, as well as Birmingham City, which was really cool. So why West Brom? Really, it came down to scheduling, and this is the first important part of planning your trip. Understanding the match schedule, when it's released, how it can change, and if trying to pack in games when the season is at its busiest. The whole reason we chose to come in April was because it was absolutely packed with matches. The leagues are playing every weekend and midweek. Champions League and Europa League are going on. There are even a few FA Cup ties still happening. So truly, April's probably the only month to do what we did in seeing a match every day. December and October are other months that have a fairly busy schedule, but I do think uniquely these 2 weeks in April were the only time that we could have done this. I'll talk about buying tickets in more detail in a bit, but speaking of the schedule, I wanted to mention the key scheduling difference between the UK versus the US, and that is that general tickets for these football matches aren't available until about 4 to 6 weeks before the match, with the exception of hospitality, which I'll talk about in the next segment. For the Football League, TV scheduling gets sorted out about 4 to 6 weeks before a match, where they determine what games will happen Saturday, Sunday, and even Monday. So if you look at a schedule when it's released at the start of the season, every match will be listed for that Saturday. So you have to wait until a month out when the exact dates are assigned. So planning for the weekend games meant waiting to see who fell where, and then we could build our itinerary. The midweek games, Tuesday through Friday, were a lot easier to schedule because they were set at the start of the season and they didn't change. This was kind of more how it's like for us in the US. When the schedule's released, generally tickets for every single game for the rest of the season become available. You can buy a ticket way out in advance. But in the UK, you can't buy general tickets that far out in advance, so you have to be flexible. So anyway, back to West Brom. When mapping out our schedule, the Championship had a slate of games Tuesday and Wednesday that week. So based on availability and proximity, West Brom was a convenient follow-up to Sheffield. And we had a great time. My favorite part of the game was actually the trek up to the stadium from where we parked. We took this path by the train tracks that went past the practice facility and then into the stadium. It was just great to take it all in. The game itself was pretty subdued. West Brom played Rotherham, who were terrible, and West Brom cruised to a very uneventful 2-0 victory. And the game was freezing, especially being from Arizona. I was definitely not used to those temperatures in April. So for the rest of the trip, I was wearing the exact same sweatshirt, rain jacket combo to get me through the cold. I'm definitely not sure how the English do it. Thursday, April 11th was a big one for us. This was our chance to go see Liverpool play Atalanta in the Europa League, and Liverpool's our team. This whole trip centered around our chance to get to Anfield and see Liverpool play. So it was thrilling that after 20 years of supporting the team, the day had finally arrived. For me, growing up in the States, Premier League football really started with Fox Sports Arizona, who around 2002, 2003 began airing a tape-delayed game from the prior week. Then in 2004, something very exciting happened. The Champions League final was going to air live. That game featured Liverpool against AC Milan, which was an all-time classic final, and I was introduced to Steven Gerrard. That was actually my first experience seeing Liverpool, as Chelsea, Man U, or Arsenal were generally the teams that got aired on TV for us. So I began to follow Liverpool more closely after that. Then came the 2006 FA Cup final victory against West Ham, where Gerrard played out of his mind. I officially became a Liverpool fan for life. The years that followed that were pretty lean for the Reds, but the past decade under Jurgen Klopp has been an incredible period for the team. So we were so grateful that we also got a chance to see Klopp before he stepped down at the end of the season. Approaching the grounds was unbelievable. We parked right at Goodison Park, which is Everton's home stadium, and journeyed across Stanley Park to Anfield. The recent Anfield expansion had just completed, so the grounds looked crisp, and the inside of the stadium was amazing. For a stadium so large, it was incredible how intimate it was. For this game, we opted to go the hospitality route to get our tickets, and that'll be the first ticket option that I'll talk through, as it is a common option for foreign travelers going to see these big clubs. There's some clear pros and cons when it comes to hospitality. The main pro is that it is a guaranteed ticket for teams where tickets are nearly impossible to come by. There's a hierarchy when it comes to buying tickets in the UK. Beyond season tickets, tickets are first offered to members of the club. There's an annual cost to being a member, and tickets are awarded to members based on seniority, which is gained through time and going to games. Some clubs have experimented with lotteries, but generally it's going to be seniority. It's only after the window for members to buy tickets closes that tickets become available to the general public. For the big clubs like Liverpool and Arsenal, tickets rarely, if ever, make it past the members to the general public. And being a member doesn't even guarantee getting a ticket. So hospitality provides a first-come, first-serve option to get these tickets without needing a membership, which is good for foreign fans who don't have a realistic way of getting enough seniority through a membership to ensure a ticket. Hospitality can also come with some additional add-ons, depending on the package. Typically, you'll get a match program, a meal of varying quality, and sometimes even a stadium tour or a meet and greet. The main con, of course, is that it's brutally expensive. They can be 5 or 6 times more expensive than a regular ticket. Additionally, unlike the regular tickets, you have to be ready to buy them at the start of the season, as they are generally released for purchase when the entire schedule drops. For big teams, they can sell out very quickly. If you buy them at the start of the season, that does mean you have to be flexible. because you likely only know the weekend the game will happen. And even that weekend could change due to a cup tie conflict or something like that, so you have to be prepared for that. Since this was a Europa League game, these tickets weren't available until after the draw happened after the previous round. So after the draw, I'd visit the Liverpool hospitality page a few times a day, waiting for the tickets to be released. And as soon as they were, I got them, which was a good thing because the following day, they were all gone. So all that said, for me, if you're making a once-in-a-lifetime trip and you have a team that you must see, I think it's reassuring to know that you're going to get into the stadium without hoping that a membership option works out only for it to fail. So we went with hospitality for our games at Anfield, and I'm glad we did. And for the upcoming games, I'll definitely talk about how we got tickets for those, because we didn't do hospitality every time. The game itself was a mixed bag. On one hand, just being there was incredible. Biased, of course, but Anfield's probably the most beautiful stadium in all of football. And the feeling of finally seeing the Reds was indescribable. And as I mentioned, the expansion work that they had done was excellent. It's crazy how, for a venue that large, you were able to feel like you were right on top of the players and right on top of the pitch. So it was amazing from that standpoint. But this particular game was interesting, as the fans were protesting an increase to ticket prices, so they'd made a resolution of not bringing any banners or being very vocal, and you can feel it. So while on one hand, I do appreciate Liverpool as a club staying true to their working class roots, and I feel for the fans because of the price increase, when it's really the only game you might ever go to, it was disappointing that was the atmosphere, but that's how it goes. And the game reflected that. Liverpool was not at their best, and Atalanta really took it to them, beat them 3-0. It was definitely surprising that Atalanta didn't have any problems with them because, Liverpool hadn't lost a home game in over a year. But that's how it goes sometimes, And while we were kind of bummed leaving the stadium because of that, by the time we got back to the hotel, we were just so amped that we'd been able to go. Just felt so fortunate that we were able to experience it. The next day of our trip, Friday, April 12th, was probably the most unique. In a rare free day, we had a chance to visit some historic Liverpool sites, as well as take in the Anfield tour. Unfortunately, it was the only day of the trip that we weren't able to see a league game, even though there was a league game happening that night. I'll tell you about it. Plymouth Argyle was playing Leicester City down in Plymouth, and while that would have been a 6-7 hour drive one way, with having to drive back to Derby the next day, we were still kind of willing to make it. However, we just couldn't get tickets for the game. Plymouth was playing Leicester, as I mentioned, who were at the top of the championship at the time. So it was a higher profile game, and Plymouth decided to put a limit where you had to have your personal ticket account open for at least a year to buy a ticket. And I'd only just opened mine. So even though tickets had reached general sale, I still couldn't buy one. I could have gone the hospitality method, but I just did not feel like paying that much money to see Plymouth, especially with regular price tickets available. Scalping wasn't an option either, because again, tickets were available through the team, so there were none on the secondary market. I did try to hit up some message boards just to see if any Plymouth fans would take some pity on us, but the messages were mostly how they supported the club's decision, or that I was probably a Leicester fan and they were glad I couldn't get a ticket. So anyway, if you are a Plymouth fan, I do now actively root for your downfall, but I think it worked out, because it would have been a brutal drive. We actually did look into buying away tickets through Leicester, but those same hierarchy rules of membership apply, and so while it could definitely be an option to go away tickets for a game in England, Leicester had sold theirs out, so it wasn't for us. Now, despite missing a league game, we were still able to find a match, this time a non-league game, around Liverpool with the help of an app called Footballogy, which shows games happening in lower divisions all across the country. We found a match featuring Lower Breck FC, who play in the Premier Division of the Northwest Counties League, which is in the 9th division of English football. So that evening, we joined 150 other spectators standing around the outside of the pitch, and it was awesome. It had a similar vibe of a small town high school football game, and the talent level was much higher than I expected. I also liked that, when the fans yelled at a lineman, he heard it. It was just really cool to talk to the people about their team, and get some appreciation that, not every team is trying to climb the ladder of English football. Teams like this are really there to provide an avenue for the talented players around the neighborhood to have a place to play, show off their skills, maybe even get spotted. Even when a lower league team wins their division, promotion isn't guaranteed. You have to have grounds that meet all the requirements for the next division. There's other qualifications as well to move up. And most winners just really don't have any intention of moving up, even if they do win. We had a great time watching Breck beat Squires Gate, and I would definitely encourage a football tourist to consider taking in a non-league game if they can. I mean, there's teams in the National League, which is the fifth division of English football, that have large followings and great histories and is very affordable. So, highly recommend non-league if you can. Our next match was on Saturday, April 13th at Derby County for their game against Leyton Orient, and we were so excited to have a Saturday day game. We'd just been to all these night games where we felt like all we were doing was sitting around or driving all day and getting to the stadium late, leaving late, then getting to the hotel late. So it was just really nice to get up early, head down to Pride Park and watch a game at 2 p.m. and feel like you had the day. At the time, Derby were fighting to get out of League One and back into the championship, so they had a lot to play for, and the atmosphere was terrific. I want to talk more about buying general tickets, as this is what we did for the vast majority of the games, including Derby. And this is key if you're not looking to break the bank on a trip like this, because buying hospitality or scalping tickets, it's going to start to add up. For this weekend, months and months before, I bought hospitality tickets for Liverpool versus Crystal Palace. But as I mentioned earlier, I bought them before knowing if the game would happen on Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. So I built out a list of the Premier League and Championship matches, as well as a couple League One games that we'd be interested in seeing. After the dates were announced, and we knew that Liverpool would be on Sunday, we narrowed our Saturday choices to Leeds, Nottingham Forest, Manchester City, Newcastle, and Derby County. Leeds would have been the pick, but they're very well supported, and we're in the middle of a title chase, and they actually didn't even have hospitality available. Forest and Newcastle would have also been really fun, but they're also very well supported, and they would have required hospitality. And, we just didn't feel like that was worth it compared to being able to see other great games at regular prices. Fortunately, due to the Champions League, we were able to see Manchester City later in the trip, so Derby was a solid choice. Similar to West Brom and Wednesday, I'd mocked out buying general tickets for Derby, and they always seemed to have them as long as you bought them in the first couple days that they were available. So I created ticket accounts for everyone ahead of time. I noted the date that their tickets would be available for general sale, and that morning, I woke up early and was able to buy our tickets without problems. We really enjoyed our time in Derby. I really liked Pride Park. It was more on the modern side as far as stadiums go in the UK. And it was one of the grounds where we got to hear some real deep cuts when it came to the chants. So we really liked that. Great fans. Derby finished the afternoon with a tidy 3-0 victory, and we enjoyed heading back to our hotel early and actually having dinner at a proper restaurant that night. Sunday, April 14th, we were back at Anfield, and this was the original game that we'd booked for the trip, using hospitality to ensure we got our tickets. As I mentioned, this game took a bit of research and planning, but I was really proud with how it turned out, because not only did it enable me to save money by booking an earlier flight, it helped to set the foundation for the whole trip. So looking at past seasons, I'd identified that match week 33 would be a reliable week to not have any unexpected changes happen. Historically speaking, the Champions League and FA Cup games, they did impact weeks around there, but week 33 in the schedule had been protected. So I was pretty confident that this would be the case for our trip, and it turned out to be right. I will say that, at the very least, if you do purchase hospitality and the game is changed, or even when they release the exact date, if it doesn't work for you, the club will offer to give you a refund. So that is some nice peace of mind knowing that the weekend might change. But obviously, if you're traveling from abroad, you don't really want your money back. You want to go to the game. So I was really glad the planning worked. Once again, we were blessed with a day game. We had time to go get a Shankly pie at home baked, and really just take our time around the grounds and really enjoy the game day atmosphere. And it definitely felt a lot livelier than it had Thursday evening a few days before. Our seats were only 3 rows up from the pitch, so we were so close to the players. And we really just got to feel the intensity of the game, which was definitely intense to say the least. Unfortunately, it ended in a 1-0 loss to Crystal Palace, but man, it was almost everything you could ask for. I mean, the crowd was right behind the players, pushing them the entire game. They were just loud the entire time. You just felt an intensity that you just don't get watching it on TV. So regardless of the result, it was a great game, amazing day. I'm just so glad that it worked out that not only did we get to see them here, but we got that additional game for the Europa League. So just really blessed to see them twice. It's also crazy to think, Virgil van Dijk, he's lost 4 home games at Anfield his whole career, and I was there for 2 of them. But you know what? That's football. On Monday, we left our little base outside of Manchester and headed down to London to go see Chelsea versus Everton. I'll talk a little bit more about our hotel strategy later in the video, but we did like a spoke and wheel situation, which saved us a ton of money on hotels. Admittedly, it did lead to a lot of driving and a lot of tired nights, but as far as saving money, and I'll talk about our budget later too, it was a good plan for cheapskates like us. And we were excited to start the next phase of our trip and get down to London. We even enjoyed a homemade meal with our distant relative Bruce and his wife Ursula, which was a welcome change from our highway gas station meals. Through the first games, we'd been having good success with parking, but we knew it'd be a lot tougher to park around Stamford Bridge. So we parked outside of town and took a train in, which was really convenient. This was the game in our trip where we opted to scalp tickets. Chelsea, obviously a big club, didn't have any tickets reach general sale. So it was between hospitality, scalping tickets, or skipping the game. We really didn't want to shell out another $500-600 for a team that wasn't exactly our favorite. So we figured, hey, it's the only game going on tonight, and it's in line with our every game plan. So let's try scalping. Worst case scenario, they wouldn't let us in the game. Ticket scalping, or touting, as they call it in the UK, is pretty frowned upon. Ticket sales are highly regulated, with the general notion being teams are capped with how much they can charge their season ticket holders and members. And in comparison with American tickets, it's definitely true. Since the prices they charge season ticket holders and members are well below market price for these high-demand clubs, the members are prohibited from turning around and selling them. They're allowed to give them to pre-listed people or, give them back to the team or other methods of, getting these tickets to somewhere through the club. But if they tout their tickets, they risk losing them or the rights to buy them in the future. So obviously this doesn't stop people from doing it, but those are the risks for those folks scalping tickets. This is so different than us buying tickets in the States, as I rarely go to the team's website to buy tickets first. I usually look at StubHub or SeatGeek to see if I can get a deal there, or if I know the game's going to be sold out, I know a secondary site's where I'm going to have to go anyway. So with this, we bought our tickets well in advance of the game, but we only got the tickets a day or two before the game, which was a little stressful, but they did say that this would be the case. They, kind of asked for your name to put on the tickets, but, the original ticket holder's name were still on our tickets, so we had 2 ladies' names on our tickets going into the match. And also they told us, don't go through the main gate. There's going to be a side one. They're less likely to look at your ticket. Go there. And at the game, they did take a look at our tickets, but luckily they didn't think too much of it. So we got through, and it worked out. As I mentioned, worst case for us was being turned away, in which case the website said they would refund us our money. So we were happy to save a few $100 and still getting into the game. And it was a great match. Credit to the Everton fans. They were loud early, but their team gave them nothing to cheer for. As Cole Palmer and Chelsea blew them out 6-0. I was honestly surprised at how I felt at the game, because I enjoyed that same surreal feeling I felt at Anfield and at Hillsborough. I think probably just watching a lot of Chelsea games over the years and playing, with them on FIFA quite a bit, there's just this special feeling of being at Stamford Bridge that I didn't expect, and it was definitely a special park. So really great atmosphere, really great closeness to the pitch as well, just a great experience. Tuesday, April 16th, we had an evening game down in Southampton to watch them play Preston North End. We didn't do too much sightseeing on the trip, but we made a special exception to see Stonehenge because it was one of the few places in the UK I did really want to see. Luckily, it was only a small detour from London to Southampton, to us anyway, and a great way to spend the morning. I'll never forget seeing Stonehenge right off the side of the road when you're approaching the heritage site. It's just really unexpected to see it so close to the road. I don't know. The main reason we didn't have a ton of time for sightseeing, though, was because of the spoke and wheel strategy we used for our hotels. Instead of going town to town and staying the night at the place of the game, we'd stay in one place for several days and drive to the match and then back again to save money. We definitely had a unique reason for doing this. My brother works in the hotel industry and had access to some really cheap rates at a handful of hotels around England. Not a ton of options, but some in some major cities where we could stay for £60 a night. And splitting that between 2 and 3 people made for some really cheap lodging. And for 14 days, I personally spent $504 on hotels for the entire trip, just $36 a night. I realize not everyone could do this, but at the tail end of the trip, some of these late night drives back did nearly break me. But saving that money allowed us to spend more money on tickets, go to some games we might not have gone to, and get more souvenirs, stuff like that. So looking back, I thought it was worth it, but it did come at the expense of enjoying some pregame and definitely post-game festivities, as well as just checking out the towns more fully. Back to football. Southampton had a fairly large stadium, and so we didn't have any issues buying a general ticket for the game. Like before, just created a ticket account, was able to get some cool seats right at the top row at the half line, which I really liked. Before the game, we ate dinner at the stadium, had a chance to chat with some cool fans there. We met a gentleman named Ian who, after telling him about our trip, told us that he knew some folks in the Referees Association that were at that Plymouth game, and he could have gotten us in had he met us beforehand, but yeah, I digress. He also shared that while it was exciting that the Saints found themselves fighting for a spot in the promotional playoff, he admitted that if you asked fans around the grounds, half of them wouldn't be too upset if they missed promotion, because they'd much rather watch Southampton challenge for a title in the championship next season than to be in a relegation battle in the Premier League. So, interesting take. Cool guy to talk to. Lifelong football fan who had a lot of good stories. And we had a great time at the game. Southampton really looked good. We sat by this local guy named Robert, who you could tell was really enjoying watching a game with some new friends. He kissed our friend Derek on the face 3 times, one for each of Southampton's 3 goals. And Southampton kept to their winning ways. They beat Preston 3-0, and we had a great night on the South Coast. The next day, April 17th, we were very excited to see Manchester City play Real Madrid in the Champions League quarterfinal. We're not fans of Manchester City, but the chance to see 2 of the biggest teams in the world was just too good to pass up. Going into the trip, it was an open day, but we knew there was a chance for some European games to fall in. So we were just praying that Manchester City would draw the 17th and West Ham would draw the 18th, and it worked out, which was amazing luck. So we just had to go. Man City is a Premier League club where you can get regular price tickets for a match. They usually don't let them hit general sale, so you'd need to buy a membership. But if you get a membership, it's usually possible to get a regular price ticket. We had friends in Sheffield tell us that they would usually go see Champions League group stages at the Etihad because they were pretty easy to get. So it's generally possible to get to the Etihad without needing hospitality. But for the Madrid game, this was not the case, obviously. So we had to shell out for hospitality. Like before, I paid a visit to their ticket site every day after the draw happened, and as soon as I saw tickets were listed, I bought them. I will say, Man City had excellent hospitality for our experience. With our Liverpool hospitality, we had amazing seats. It was a dream to go, but the food options were well below average, especially when you consider the price tag. But Manchester City, it was nice. They hosted their hospitality at a restaurant, which we were able to leave our car there for the game, and that was super convenient. And the meal was amazing. It was an Indian food buffet that was probably our best meal of the whole trip. And I'll give the fans credit as well at the game. I know their grounds have a reputation that's earned them the name the Etihad, but for this game, the fans were out. They were loud. They even had some good tifos ready for this match, so they boosted the environment for sure. There were a lot of Madrid fans too. I'm sure we were sitting in a hospitality section, and I noticed at these games, the teams did a good job kind of containing the away fans in their own section, but that was not the case for this game. We had Madrid fans in our section. They were kind of everywhere, and this led to some frustration with the locals, especially when they scored. The game was very tight, ultimately decided by PKs, in which Madrid won. Going to PKs was unfortunate for us because we opted not to divert from our hotel strategy, leading us to have to start the drive back to London from Manchester around 11 p.m. We didn't get back until after 3 a.m. It was probably the one time I did regret not shelling out for a hotel, but due to so many travelers coming into town for that game, the prices were all north of £300, and our cheapness got the best of us, and we just bit the bullet and drove back. All in all, being proud Americans driving long distances isn't usually something that bothers me, But driving in the UK it's just not the same as the States. The entire highway is seemingly patrolled with speed cameras, which we saw flash all the time. The speed limit's already lower than I'm used to, and it's frequently lowered even more by the constant construction going on. Even when there's not construction going on, it seems like they lower the speeds for no reason. And finally, they'll just close long stretches of road with no viable alternative except for meandering back roads all the time, it seems. So, we drove just over 3,000 miles in the 15 days we were there, but it felt like 5,000. So if there was one thing I would have done over again, it would have been to increase our hotel budget to limit that a little bit. But looking back at it almost a year later, you don't really remember the long drives, you remember the matches. The last thing I will say about the City match, my brother and I were able to load up on awesome scarves during the trip. We really wanted to get the City Madrid half and half quarterfinal scarf, but they completely sold out before we could get one. So if by chance someone watching happened to get that scarf and they no longer need it, please reach out. I'd love to take it off your hands. The next day, as I mentioned, we got another bonus game, this time in the Europa League with West Ham. More exciting, they were playing Bayer Leverkusen, who went on to win the German title that year and had just an insane season. So we were amped for this matchup. Like with Chelsea, we didn't want to deal with driving in London, so we parked out of town and took the train in. This time making some time to see some proper sights, by which of course I mean the new Tottenham Stadium, which was gorgeous, and the Emirates where the Arsenal play. We did swing by Big Ben too, which I enjoyed seeing more than I thought I would, so definitely worth the detour. I know I've talked a lot about using hospitality to see these Premier League clubs, but I wanted to mention that there are Premier League clubs like West Ham that you can get a regular price ticket for. You have to act faster to get them than you would a Championship or League One club, but if you set up your ticket accounts in advance and note the times when the tickets are released, you can definitely have a chance to get them. West Ham, Aston Villa, Brighton, Southampton, Wolves, when I'd research, they'd reliably have tickets reach general sale for many games. Even clubs like Man City or Tottenham, they might make you buy a membership in order to get tickets, but their stadiums are large, and oftentimes they'll have tickets reach the members with low or even no seniority, and the memberships aren't that much money. Finally, Fulham, Newcastle, Crystal Palace, and other clubs have started offering what's called premium tickets, which are more expensive than a regular ticket, but far cheaper than a hospitality package, where a non-member can go see them for around $100, and I bet that trend will continue with a lot of clubs. So what I'm saying is you don't always have to shell out for hospitality. For our trip, for example, I personally spent around $1,900 for tickets. It's 14 games. But of that, $1,400 was for hospitality for 3 matches, and then I spent another $200 on that Chelsea match. The other 10 games only cost me $377, so that's like $38 a game. And if I were to do a similar trip, I'd probably just stick to buying regular tickets for Championship, League One, and just other teams I haven't seen, because every experience just seemed to be so great, so many great stadiums and great teams to see, and it's just much more affordable. Anyway, we had a great time at the London Stadium. The place was packed, and they had opened up every seat in the stadium, which they don't always do, as sometimes they'll block off certain sections when they don't need them. They also announced that it was their first complete sellout of the entire stadium for a West Ham game ever. So that was really cool to be a part of. Bayern hadn't lost a single game all year. For a moment, we thought perhaps West Ham might be the ones to beat them. Bayern did manage a draw, and they were the ones that advanced to the next round. The fans were great and rowdy. We sat next to some really cool dudes. It was funny. We were seeing ABBA posters all over the country while we were there, because they were doing some sort of hologram concert. And at the Olympic Park, they had a ton of these posters. So I asked the guys next to us, is ABBA really such a big deal here? And he responded, massive, mate. You have no idea. So anyway, thought that was funny. We had a great night, and I'm just glad to know the English still love ABBA. Since Friday, April 19th was our last day in the Luton area, we went to take a glimpse at their infamous stadium. If you don't know much about their stadium, I recommend searching YouTube for some matchday videos, as it's unique to say the least. It's literally packed in a neighborhood, featuring gates that are literally built between houses. Unfortunately for us, due to the stadium's small size and Luton's improbable promotion to the Premier League, tickets were impossible to get, so we were content just to walk around the grounds. After our Luton Town visit, and another detour to see the famous Elton John mural at Vicarage Road, we headed out to the only EFL game happening that night in Oxford. While most tourists go to Oxford to visit the university, I'd take a game at Cassim Stadium over a campus tour any day. We even got to see the famous Wickham is Massive mural outside the grounds. One surprisingly cool aspect of this trip was that April is the time that all of the jerseys and kits are clearanced out to prep for the next season. So we were able to buy some amazing jerseys for 20, 30 pounds a piece, as well as some other cool stuff. My brother bought a pair of player-worn Sheffield Wednesday training pants for £5, and he wore them every day. These jerseys can be really expensive for us in the States, and shipping makes them even more so. So the fact that we got to load up on some great kits was really cool. And Oxford's was no exception. I loved their yellow kit with the blue stripes they wore that year, so I had to pick one up. My favorite part of the game was that the fans spent probably the first 15 minutes singing about Swindon Town, how much they hated Swindon Town, asking all within the sound of their voice to stand up. They also hated Swindon. This was despite the fact that they were playing Stevenage and weren't even in the same league as Swindon Town. That's the kind of rivalry I can really get behind. My second favorite part of the game also had to do with standing up. Many of the songs they sing, and not just at Oxford, love to tell people to stand up. Stand up for this, stand up for that. And obviously not everyone's standing up for these, but there was this one song when they started singing Stand Up for the FA Cup, and the lady sitting next to me grabbed my arm and forcibly stood up with me. So my brother stood up next to me and gave me a what the heck look, and I'm like, hey man, I don't have a choice, I stand up for the FA Cup. So even to this day, we like to periodically remind each other that we stand up for the FA Cup. So all in all, really fun night, great crowd, and Oxford earned a 1-1 draw. Saturday, April 20th marked the end of our business in the London area and the start of the last portion of our trip. Our last base would be in Middlesbrough, up in northeast England, and the game that day would be Sunderland vs. Millwall at the Stadium of Light. After a week of night games, once again, we were greatly looking forward to a couple weekend day games. Sunderland was actually a team we really wanted to see. Once a staple in the Premier League, the team had fallen on hard times, but they were a prominent team when we first got into watching football. And for some reason was a team both of us kept an eye on, even during their lean years. So we were really excited to see them. Getting a ticket was very easy, as they play in one of the largest stadiums in the championship. And while they had been pushing for promotion at the start of the year, they had floundered in the second half. Didn't have anything to play for as the season wound down. So tickets were in low demand. I've talked here and there about what we spent along the way, so I wanted to provide my budget for the trip. Some of these costs would be typical for any similar trip, and some were unique to our situation. But if you wanted to plan a trip like this and were curious about the cost, here was my experience. I will point out, the advanced planning I did allow me to get some cheaper flights by buying early, and coordinating a match route did help make our hotel strategy work, and both those things saved me a ton of money. While I bought some things in dollars and some things in pounds, I've converted everything to dollars for the budget. I paid $838 for my round-trip flight, which included checking a large suitcase. My portion for our hotels was $504. My portion for our rental car was $167, $500 split 3 ways. I did get a driving ticket and a parking ticket on the trip, both from the borough of Harrow. Come on, guys. But I won't include them. Gas and food cost me $550, with nearly $275 of that going toward gas, which was very pricey, especially when you consider like all three of us contributed almost that amount. I spent $488 on souvenirs, mostly jerseys and scarves, as I bought something at every game I went to. I also spent $70 sightseeing, which was for Stonehenge and the Anfield Tour. And finally, I spent a total of $1,947 on tickets for the matches. As I mentioned, hospitality for 3 games was the lion's share of this, as the rest of the matches, minus Chelsea, were very reasonable. Prices varied depending on the clubs, as well as where we sat, but as you can see, I thought the cost for regular tickets was very fair. So all in all, I spent $4,564, which I think is pretty good for 14 days. While we were excited to visit the Stadium of Light, I unfortunately have to say that the match might have been the most disappointing of the trip. The energy was low, the crowd ranged from relaxed to even cynical toward the end, which was a bummer, but we understood it as the team really didn't give us much to cheer for, and Millwall grabbed a 1-0 victory. But all in all, great stadium to visit, and we were definitely excited to be a different part of the country. April 21st was our last Premier League game of the trip. Back in Birmingham, this time at Villa Park to see Aston Villa play Bournemouth. I will say Villa Park was easily my second favorite stadium for the trip. I loved walking by the Parish and the Holt on the way to the grounds. The facade at Villa Park matched these buildings so perfectly. I just loved it. I also loved the way the Trinity Road stand literally hung over Trinity Road. Just everything about the stadium was cool. Like the other stadiums, I'd been reviewing ticket availability for Aston Villa and saw that pretty reliably, if you acted quickly when tickets reached general sale, you could get them. I want to point out, for planning purposes, that some matches for teams that generally have tickets available are harder to get than other games. The first few games and the last few games of the season are generally pretty well attended and sell out. Also, if the game is a derby or a rivalry game, tickets can easily sell out regardless of how the team's doing. While FA Cup ties and Carabao Cup ties might be easier tickets to get for large Premier League teams, for smaller teams, that might be the biggest games of the year. Finally, if a team is in a title hunt or playing a team in a title hunt, as I learned, you might not be able to get tickets. So this definitely impacted our options, as we had to forgo seeing some teams for others because tickets we hoped to get sold out once they reached the members. So just something to keep in mind if you're planning a trip like this. Who the team plays and when they play can matter. Anyway, tickets for a normal game against Bournemouth meant we were able to get tickets, and I'm really glad we did because I just had a great time. Despite my disappointment to learn that they used the same song as Sheffield Wednesday to start their game, which is wild considering these clubs are hundreds of years old and could literally choose any song, but whatever. The atmosphere was excellent. The team played fantastic and really kept everyone entertained as they were able to beat Bournemouth 3-1. This match also marked the last terrible drive of the trip, as we drove down from Middlesbrough to Birmingham and back that day for the sake of our cheap hotel. But fortunately, I was able to catch up with my old friend Dave and his family on the drive back and enjoy a homemade meal, so that made it well worth it. Monday, April 22nd was our very last game of the whole trip, where we were able to see Middlesbrough play Leeds. There was definitely a bittersweet feeling about the day, as we were sad it was going to be our last match, but we were also exhausted, we were homesick, we had driven far too much, and we were ready to go home. Because we, for once, actually stayed the night in Middlesbrough, we didn't have to do any driving that day. So we slept in, we actually went out and saw a movie, took our time at lunch and just hung out until it was time to go to the game. So that kind of confirmed it. We were definitely ready to go home. Similar to our experience with Plymouth, since Borough was playing Leeds, who were in a title chase and also always have a large traveling contingent, the club instituted a rule where only Borough fans who had purchased tickets to 3 prior games could get a ticket. So once again, despite plenty of tickets being available, I wasn't able to get one, even after calling and begging the ticket office. Fortunately, when I went to a Borough message board on Reddit, I got in touch with a fan who offered to buy me tickets for the game, which was exactly what I was hoping for. It obviously took a bit of faith to send over the money, but they came through, got us some great seats in the rowdy supporters section. So it was also the same fan that pointed out the Footballogy app that helped us to find those non-league games, which was awesome. They also pointed out a local dish to try called a parmo, which was less awesome, but it was still worth a try. All in all, just super appreciative of that Borough fan. And the game was definitely a top 5 of the trip. I did not know what to expect from a Borough game, as the last I remembered about them, Gareth Southgate was their manager forever ago. But we were pleasantly surprised. The game itself was frantic and high scoring. We really loved just being in the middle of the home fans and the away fans who were just giving each other the business the whole game. Sadly, it ended 3-4 in favor of Leeds. But we were on our feet and loud the entire game, so much respect to the Borough faithful. It was just a sensational way to end our trip. I hope you enjoyed following me for a glimpse at our trip. As I mentioned, my goal wasn't to do a match day experience, as there are plenty of good videos out there on YouTube that would do a much better job than I ever could. Plus, talking in public while filming is not really for me. But I really just wanted to provide some insight to fans in the States who might be considering, finally taking that trip to see their favorite team in the UK. So for those of you watching, I hope you found some useful information. I hope you found the video interesting, and maybe it did inspire you to take that trip, make it happen. And really, if you have any questions about how I went about doing anything at all, please leave a comment. I'll be very happy to answer any questions I can. Also, feel free to like and subscribe to the video, which would let me know if there is any interest in providing any further information about the trip. Additionally, I'm going to put a link to my website in the description, which will give you more details about buying tickets, ticket options, and strategizing a UK football trip. So please check out the website, and hopefully it can be a resource for someone looking to book their own UK Football Odyssey. Thanks so much for watching.